record this. Okay, good. Thanks. Welcome everyone to Product Council today. Today we're going to study a proposition or a proposal for a Mojaloop Marketplace, looking at adjacent or overlay services related to the Mojaloop core and perhaps making them more widely available to other adopters. Our leader today is going to be Julie, who is well known to all of you, I think. So I will just hand over to Julie and leave you all in her capable hands.
Thank you, Paul. Let me share my screen. What did I do?
Got this?
Okay, so you should be able to see full screen now. Can you
Yes.
confirm it is okay? Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
All right, so thank you so much for joining this session for some of you in rather random hours. So I appreciate you joining this call and taking the time to review this proposal. So the purpose of the call today is actually to review a new concept that we want to introduce, the marketplace, and gather feedback on basically this strawman and some of the core principles that we've been trying to define. So far, I think we definitely had a lot of internal discussion about the marketplace. I think we also had a discussion with some members of the community on this. So the idea is really to have sort of a virtual brainstorming session and effectively discuss what could be the core principle of this marketplace. So please, I encourage you to give as much feedback as possible. I think, yeah, please give as much feedback. There is never bad feedback, and I think for some of you who have worked with me for quite some time now, you know it. And yeah, I really want this set of slides to be considered as a first proposition that is meant to be enhanced, either today or over time. I'm sure once the marketplace is basically live, some of this some of the principles that we discuss will need to be reviewed. So please feel free to raise your hand at any time or interrupt me if I don't see you, and I'll give you the floor. Okay, so just perhaps to set the scene a bit more, right? It's interesting actually because even through going some of the terminology that were used in this deck, we discover that even within the foundation, sometimes we have a bit of different definition of the term ecosystem between the product team and the go-to-market team. But from a product standpoint, what do we call the ecosystem? So effectively, we have the Mojaloop hub at the center that connects to the account lookup services. Then that will gather participants and that will be connected to a settlement partner. And this per se form the foundation of the technical foundation of the scheme on which can scheme rules be overlaid. When we look effectively at the definition of ecosystem within the Mojaloop website, it's actually more a set of actors as well. So if you go to mojaloop.io, you see that what we call ecosystem is members, is basically partners, and is service provided. So for the purpose of this presentation, at least, when we refer to the Mojaloop core, we will refer to actually the open source inclusive instant payment that enables the orchestration of instant payment transaction, along with a set of open source components that we call overlay that facilitate participation in a Mojaloop based deployment. And the Mojaloop, what we will call the Mojaloop ecosystem, is actually like a broader set of participants, services, and solutions that can surround and extend the platform. So it can include like a system integrator, a technology provider. It can include like institutions that implement value added or agency services. And it's also like from a product standpoint, as I mentioned on the previous slide, it will include governance, scheme rules, and operational framework. So it's more or less, if you look at it not from an actor perspective, but from a product perspective, it's more or less all the various components that make a scheme successful and widely adopted. Um, I think when we look at what the existing ecosystem organization categorization, and I mentioned it 2 minutes ago, if you go on Mojaloop website, like basically you will have three categories: the member, the partner, and the service provider. Um, and all of these form our ecosystem, and the Mojaloop ecosystem is organizations that support the core Mojaloop platform and agencies or services. And sometimes actually within these agency services, from a product standpoint, we call them overlay services as well. And if you look at basically what are the members, so by the way, all these definition are extract from the Mojaloop website, right? So they contribute to the governance, direction, and sustainability of the Mojaloop platform. We have today two levels of membership: sponsor and promoter. Sponsor have access to our board members, and promoter have access to the TGB, so the Technical Governing Board. And partners. So, sorry, I noticed there is a typo. I will fix it. They shape the future of inclusive instant payment, and they aim to significantly boost market development effort and reach unbanked and underserved people more rapidly. And in terms of the partners, we have a wide range of organizations basically targeting emerging markets or who are regulatory experts or open source and standard groups or research institute seeking to influence industry direction of travel on payments and financial inclusion. And on service provider, again, we have a wide variety of service provider, including institutions that are working on the implementation, maintenance, and modification of the Mojaloop services, but others that are working on broad payment system related services, such as, like, for example, if we take Clanbook, they help on business models, they help on scheme rules as well. Or like, some of the other party, yeah. So we'll basically, their idea is like, or they'll help on project, like for example, some organization will help on how to set up the project. So overall, this category is quite large of different actors that actually provide different services. So when we look at the existing categorization, we sort of face three challenges. The number one is, if you go on our website, there are actually some organizations that are listed in several places. I think if you take, for example, GFTN or FNA, they are listed as both partners and service provider. The service provider directory is very broad, and it includes a wide range of institutions. So if you go on basically the service provider directory, it's a bit of a mix and match with no categorization. And the last point, which will be perhaps a bit more the focus of today, is like today, we don't really have any defined category for organizations that wish to contribute products that are adjacent or overlaying the Mojaloop core. And so that's why we wanted to discuss a bit more this concept of marketplace. Okay, so I think when we look at how potentially, we can structure a bit more the ecosystem. So the idea was, let's start with organization, and what the organization do. So the first question is, do they produce code? If they are not producing code, then the idea would be that they are just listed as a partner, right? And the example of that could be potentially Glenn Brook of GFTN. They allow, um, they create the foundation for an instant payment to succeed, but they are more working on regulation and scheme rule and so on, right? And if they provide code, then the idea would be, do they actually want to donate this code? And if the answer is more or less like, no, in fact, we can have like two, they'll be listed in the service provider directory. And so we've decided to short of create restructure the service provider directory as well. And on one end, we'll have the implementer directory, which are like, listing the SI delivering Mojaloop implementation. So here I mentioned a few examples in FITEX, fit the work wired in, but we will have also like, the local SI such as IJANE, Emosys, and so on. And then we'll have another directory, which are effectively like the agency services directory, listing provider offering products and or services that complement the Mojalo platform. So, for example, Tazama, Visa, and FNA. Visa will definitely not donate their platform to the open source, at least as of today. And so, but they won't donate any code, but they'll definitely be listed in the service directory. And if they basically if the organization then deliver code, the second question is, what type of code wants to be delivered? Is it a type of code that is part of basically um, the core Mojaloop platform, where effectively it's necessary for the switch to operate, or is it more related to an agency or overlay services? And if it's yes, basically it's a code produced by the organization, then we already have published a guide on how to contribute to the Mojalo code. And if it's no, this is where like the idea would be for the product to be listed in Mojaloop Marketplace. And you will see it as well in the follow-up slide, but basically there are a differentiation between product, and the marketplace will be focusing on product. That's why here it's a product and organization. And when it comes to the organization, the idea is like to list them in the service provider directory. So I just want to repeat this and insist a bit, because this is one of the core principles, that the marketplace is for product and the service directory will be for organization. Uh, perhaps I'll cover these two slides, and then for sure we'll take a break for discussion. So what's the definition of the marketplace? So it's a collection of optional community contributed components, extension and implementation accelerators that complement the Mojalo core system. And here the core is to be understood as in the product term. So basically like what is available on our GitHub repository. It provides adapters with reusable building blocks, such as overlay services like a portal that can help accelerate their go-to-market strategy. So if you think, for example, of something that could be available in the marketplace, it could be a business operation portal, or it could be dispute management. And for the business operation portal is probably a really relevant example in this occurrence, because we know that there are today several business operation portals that exist and that are live. Beyond the one provide available on Mojaloop GitHub repository. So when there are potentially some components that are doing like, the same functionality and coming as an overlay, we think that this is the perfect place for them to sit and be available. The idea of basically the marketplace is to really foster adoption and encourage community innovation. And I think like on top of everything else, like fast track um, uh, go to market strategy, right? Because the idea is like if one implementer or like somebody from the community has built a portal and they feel that it could be reusable for somebody else to build on top of this, but it's an overlay services and there is no time to, or there is no time to fully go through the Mojaloop code contribution process, and that could be a place where this can live. Um, one key aspect is what will be available in the marketplace um, is not required for an implementation to function. So the core code, the core switching capabilities of the Mojaloop tool and so on will remain as part of the Mojaloop GitHub repository. And I think like what is critical to perhaps mention as well, and it's a critical design principle as well, um, is to say that the contribution in the marketplace is made as is, with the contribution clearly labeled, with like who contributed, basically like which product version is compatible with this contribution, and what the support model. And the support model will be provided by the contributor. It won't be provided by the foundation. So the other point is where are these reference? So the idea is like it will be in the contributor GitHub repository, or as a fallback option, they can be referenced in. We'll have a new a new GitHub repository called Marketplace. But our preferred option is these are just these reside on the contributor GitHub repository, but they are referenced on Mojaloop GitHub with some links for somebody who wants to adopt it to do so. And because again, like these components are provided as is, they are not part of the Mojaloop product release cycle. So we have a very stringent release principle process, sorry, where basically like each release process goes through a test of a series of tests and so on. So in this case, they will not go through a product release cycle. There are two types of components, so community contributed components, so fully functional components, which are built by implementers and adopters shared by the Mojaloop community for broader use. So broader use, like I mentioned a portal, I already mentioned like, dispute management could also be a component made available in the marketplace. And the second thing is they are commercially supported components. So they can be components made available by the implementers with the option that adopters may engage with them for ongoing support and services. Basically, from a marketplace standpoint, it will be business model ambivalent, right? So the business model will be up to the organizations that donate the product available in the marketplace. I started a bit on this, and I also like put this box here because we had some discussion around this internally on the difference between marketplace and adjacency services. So I mentioned the first point already: the marketplace cover product, the directory captures company. The two are interconnected with potentially some link existing between the two. So a product, for example, payment manager of the business operation portal, may be available in the marketplace, but they may not be an associated company in the directory. On the other side, company can be listed in the agency services directory, but with no product available in the marketplace. And the middle point is if actually a company do both, they provide agency services and they want to made available some of their product in the marketplace, that is possible, but basically, ideally, they should be referenced. Okay, so I stop here. I see there are 6 comments in the chat, hopefully from some human. Okay, Winston, I can see you have made some comments, so perhaps would you mind to unmute yourself and share a bit your thoughts on yeah, the marketplace and the definition of the marketplace?
Hi. Hey, good to see everyone. No, just very quick questions. I think some of it's answered already, but just curious about the license, and I think it's okay to align with the Mojaloop license. The only question I have is for those of us who may contribute but also want to support the contribution commercially, what are our thoughts for dual licensing?
Yeah, so I think when we say basically like, and Sam, perhaps do you want to unmute yourself first before we complement your answer because you put an answer in the chat. So please,
Sure.
perhaps go first.
Yeah, put my second point first is that is I was saying that is something we are discussing now with this marketplace definition introduction, which is I think a work in progress. Is what I'm saying is you can have your own license, but share the product or list that feature or product on a marketplace and then service it based on like as relevant. However, if you want to donate it to Mojaloop 100%, then our current contribution process says that it should be compatible with Apache 2.0. And as it goes through the contribution process, then the Mojaloop license will apply to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay. Any other comments on these 2 slides? I can see we have a few people from Fit to Work in the call, so hopefully you also do some donation in the marketplace. So I was, yeah, I'd be keen to hear your opinion on these core design principles.
Yes, Julie. Last time we have been talking about to donate our operation portal, right? So I think this our operation portal will be part of this marketplace.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay. One more question is for the operation portal based on our CEO directions. We will have a various release, something like a community and also the enterprise. So in that case, let's say we are selling operation portal in the enterprise version 2, then this one will stay eligible to list on the marketplace because we have one commercial version, another one is the open source version.
Yes, the idea was yes, actually, that both could be listed on the marketplace, and then as long as basically the difference is business model is explained.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Julie.
I think that was the idea, but yeah, but again, like I want to insist, and perhaps I want to insist again on the principle, right? Like we are in the process of defining this, so. Right now, this call is really like, for the community to also um, come and say this design principle does not work, or this design principle should be changed or enhanced. So really, really, please, if you're not aligned with any of the point or feel that it should be improved, feel free to mention it. Okay.
Yes, Julie.
Julie, Winston has asked another question. you might want to address.
Sure, please go for it, Winston.
Oh no, I didn't want to dominate the questions. But anyway, no, I was just wondering, I mean, do we model ourselves to something like the Apache Software Foundation or the Eclipse Software Foundation, or is it more of a loose listing of marketplaces? And if that's the case, if it's the former, would we have like a process for incubation, acceptance, and project management, or is this more of a list and contribute and you know self-manage your project basically?
No, there is like, so if you can hold your question for one more slide, because it's basically a draft of the process is shared on the next slide, and then yeah, I'll give you the floor to comment on the process after,
Perfect.
that we can enrich it. Okay, so what basically will be available in the marketplace versus in the Mojaloop GitHub repository and core repository, right? So again, like we want to make sure about what the roles and responsibility and the difference between the code available in the Mojaloop core GitHub repository and the marketplace. So one is obviously like the code available in the core repository represents the canonical implementation of Mojaloop components. We know it has been reviewed, validated, it meets all Mojaloop community and governing bodies quality and security standard. And what I call the here, I will share the slide and you see like there are standard guides on as I mentioned before, right? Like how contribution could be made by governing bodies, like it is to be understood as the DA, the Product Council, CCB, the TGB to some extent, depending on the changes. So the core repository goes through official product release as well, and it's maintained and supported by the Mojaloop Foundation and community member, basically across version. And it is guaranteed to remain backwards compatible with future release using the golden testing pass. And the market repository, so it will include optional and non-mandatory features such as overlay services. So we discussed the business operation portal. It could be a merchant payment registry as well. By adjacent tools and integration. So for example, for us, offline payments and applications that allow to support offline payment will go into the marketplace. And it can support as well like vertical or very specialized use case. So for example, today, the hub is operated around this concept of like a push payment, not direct debits with mandate management. So this will probably go to the marketplace. So again, this table resumes what's the difference between the Mojaloop GitHub core repository and the marketplace. Here you will find functionalities that are essential for the Mojaloop system to function. It's not the case in the marketplace. It includes optional and non-mandatory features. Here, the code in the Mojaloop core again follow like Mojaloop quality and security standard. So it goes through a rigorous delivery process. Here, this code is maintained and supported by the Mojaloop community. Is guaranteed to be production ready by the Mojaloop Foundation sorry, there is a typo, for each product release. And so it goes through, it meant to be understood as going through the release process that we go through. Backward compatibility, I just mentioned it as well. So the code available in the repository, it's supported by the Mojaloop Foundation for remediation of bugs and issues related to core functionality at level L4. And it is published on our website as well. So core code maintenance. And this one is provided, what we have in the Mojaloop repository, it's completely free of charge. There is no license. It can be fully adopted. And it's fully under the control of the entities that adopt it and deploy it. here, as we mentioned earlier in the marketplace, like basically the business model is up to the person contributing to the or donating the functionality in the marketplace. And I think originally, like, what we discussed is when we look at the GitHub repository, it's in line with the level 1 project principle on the marketplace. Like when we start discussing direct debits payments with mandate management, this is no longer in line with the level 1 principle. Okay, so what are the requirements for marketplace contribution? And hopefully this slide and the next one answer a bit of your question, Winston, is first of all, the idea is like to understand what wants to be donated. So during basically what we call the prerequisite phase, there should be a brief description of the feature, its purpose, what use cases it's potentially meeting, and any known limitation as well. It must compile and run on the declared Mojaloop product version, and with evidence of this, it must include documentation and deployment instruction, must contain test with a high-level coverage. Actually, the coverage will be also defined. The coverage required will be defined by the type of functionality that is being considered to be donated. And here, when we say must compile and run, obviously evidence should be provided, and part of this will be the test coverage. Must declare version compatibility, so it's linked to this point as well. Must be supported by the contributor or explicitly declared unsupported, so that people can take an informed decision when they decide to deploy it, and ideally adhere to the Mojaloop style and design guide. Ideally be evaluated against the requirements defined by the Mojaloop community. So for example, for the portal, the business portal, we have defined basically some requirements, and we also have defined an assessment spreadsheet of basically the portal. So what's the process to contribute to the marketplace? So Winston, this answer your question a bit. So step 0 is number 1, do you meet the marketplace contribution requirement? And if you do, then there will be an incubation phase, where the idea is like you fill in the marketplace information spreadsheet, and then you engage with your account manager. We will then discuss with you, like help you to engage with basically the community, and discuss various points and expose various points to the community, such as like licensing of the contribution and new dependencies required, current state of the code, included documentation, test, code quality, and potential shortfalls, performance impact, and so on. So the idea would be that once all the prerequisites as well are there, and then there is an idea that this idea is discussed with the community, and particularly like some of the governing boards, such as like product council or the DA or the CCB and so on, right? So that they can review and help you during your incubation phase. And then once basically public adoption once basically the incubation phase is finished, and then there are agreements that definitely this is a functionality that meet all these requirements here, then the idea would be to then make sure that the link of the repository where the functionality is available is published, and then making sure that the information spreadsheet is published, and making sure that obviously like this is referenced in the Mojaloop Marketplace GitHub repository, do the Slack announcement, and make sure that all the artifacts are also published along with this donation. And if there is like as well any recommendation for like modification of any Mojaloop training, mentioning it as well, so that it can be done. Winston, does it answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I think it's a good, simple starting point. And then I think over time, we will see projects that are larger and projects that are smaller and projects that are probably more strategically aligned to the core that, we might have different ways of governing it, but it's a good place to start. I think it's good to have flexibility. Um, and then again, just a question back of dual licensing. I think at least for us, we're thinking of donating an adjacent product that ties um, closely to Mojaloop, but some adopters may require that it's dual licensed commercially, at least for that, the implied support and all that stuff for the product. So um, that's somewhere down the road. I think it was just good to know that that can be facilitated.
Yeah. I think that's the last slide. So any other question or comment from the group? And the group is quite small, so we have time to take feedback from everybody almost.
Any comments from anyone? No.
Actually, just a final one. Are all donations required to be open sourced, or can it be
No.
product? So it has
Business model ambivalent.
okay, makes sense.
Steve,
Sorry, Julie, can you repeat your answer? It broke up on my side.
so I said business model ambivalent, but I should have had, obviously, we encourage open source donation, right?
So my question, so then I have two questions then, but the question I have then is, if you're talking about donating code, I mean, all of this up until this point, if you look at the requirements in your slide deck, I mean, compile and run on declared Mojaloop product version. Is it possible that, I mean, is it possible to comply with the requirements on slide 10 without being open source? And then the follow-up question to that is, who's responsible for making sure that a contribution to the marketplace meets these requirements on slide 10?
Okay, so I think for me, it should be possible to run some like a non-open source component on the Mojaloop product version and have the test run and compile. But because the question come from Winston originally, perhaps do you want to address Steve's question on this point?
I'm still thinking about it. I I think it's harder if it's not open source. But that was actually gonna question I want to ask back to the foundation. Are we resourcing it from the foundation standpoint, or is it self-governed, or what's the
Yeah.
intent?
I think on basically like helping on making it compile and run, I would say that the idea of the marketplace is effectively that it's not resource right.
Okay.
And then to Steve's point around uh, who decide and what the incubation process, I think for me like that would vary depending on the nature of the market of effectively the donation that is done in the marketplace. But I would expect here that when there is this review process at the end of the incubation phase, that there is some sort of approval to say, yeah, okay, this can go into the marketplace because it's meet the requirement, or no because it doesn't meet the requirement. And for example, like I know we had some discussion around the portal that fits the work wanted to donate.
Yeah, so that would be the exit criteria from incubation, right?
Yeah.
What would that be? Um, I, I I I would imagine at the outset it's not going to be hundreds of donations. It'd be like a few or tens. of donation, and I think we can, as a community, maybe just compare notes and kind of rate each other's exit criteria for incubation. What would that be for you, Julie? Is that it compile against a known version, or that it has gone to production, or it's
Yeah.
got a certain level of documentation associated? I mean, you know what I mean? So, or do we just go by ranking and have the community rank?
No,
The
I think all of this, and like you see, for example, in the portal requirements, we've done a matrix as well, where basically like on the core functionality, so that you have an overall score of the core of the feature of the portal. And so the idea is like for the potential adopter of the portal, they can take an informed decision of what the portal contain or not. Paul.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the important perspective is that it deploys with and will integrate with the declared Mojaloop product version and deliver the requirements which are set out by the Mojaloop community. For example, we have prepared some detailed portal requirements. I set out I defined a new version of the portal requirements just last week, and it's currently out for review. But the assumption is that not all of those requirements need to be met by every contribution. So evaluated against the requirements doesn't mean that all of those requirements are met, but the evaluation report will indicate where there were omissions in compliance with the requirements, and it's up to an adopter to decide whether they think that those omissions are important.
Thank you,
For
Paul.
example, in terms of portals, some portals may not work well with cross-border transactions, for example. Others may focus on enhanced settlement functionality, whatever it may be. So we're not assuming that all contributions are equal. If, for example, they claim to be a portal. I'll hand over to Michael, if I may.
You certainly may. Thank you. I was just going to add that there will, we expect and hope, be contributions that don't have requirements either because we haven't thought of them or because we have thought of them but haven't got so far as producing requirements ourselves. And examples in my mind are things like PSP systems that, for instance, you imagine a merchant support system which uses Mojaloop to provide services to merchants, which, for instance, allow them to run monthly accounts for their customers, make orders from their suppliers, all of those sorts of things. Now, we don't have any requirements currently defined for those, but if someone were to come and say, I've got this system, it works with Mojaloop, and this is what it does, I think we would welcome them with open arms.
Completely agree, Michael. Yeah. But there has to be space in our evaluation process to also highlight additional functionality that a particular contribution supports that other adopters might be interested in.
Okay, perhaps like because we have a few minutes left, and I see we have Vice, and thank you, Vice, for joining this call, and we have Yev as well. So both of you, like, would you mind to perhaps share your view on what the design principle presented today as active community members? If Vice or Yev, you're talking, you're on mute. Vice, we can barely hear you. I can see you unmuted yourself. But yeah, Vice, since you've been a member of the community, like what is your thoughts on this design principle presented? On this principle presented? Yeah. Yev, perhaps any thoughts?
Oh,
Okay. Okay, well, if there is no other comments, then I guess we can close the call. But please, like, if I appreciate this is a new thing, and to be fair, even internally, like, we had several iterations of what we're presenting today and so on. So if you
Yeah.
have any follow-up comment and so on, like, please feel free to share with us.
Yeah, Julie, just quick question for me. I mean, would you have kind of a timeline in mind in terms of maybe kickoff and all that stuff? And then the other is, what can we do to help?
I guess like and Paul, like I also invite you to complement my answer. Like what we were thinking is starting with actually the business portal. But if you also like want to um, test the process with some of the features that we discuss as well, like yeah, we can discuss it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, our intention at the moment is to integrate the what we're calling the marketplace portal into the Mojaloop documentation site with links to any contributions, and also the ability to download the set of requirements that contributions would be measured against. And we will start there with the portals, because we know that there are at least 3 members of the community that have portals that they would consider donating. And I think it would be useful to, I suppose, test out this process with those portals to begin with. So yes, we have the draft requirements, and we'll be publishing those shortly and integrating them into the marketplace. And really, we'll take it from there. We'll go whichever direction the community wants us to take this. We're trying to facilitate here, not really prescribe. And I hope that helps. Okay, if there are no further questions, I suggest we end this session now, if that's okay with you, Julie.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining this call and for your contribution.
Great,
thank
thank you.
you.
And
Thanks.
I will be sharing a recording of this later today. So thank you, everyone.
So were lots of bots. Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.